My bakery was about to close forever. A panicked old man begged me for a cake. I helped him. The next day, a woman walked in. "My grandfather told me about you," she said, and made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Part 1. I was minutes from closing my struggling bakery for the night, when an old man rushed in begging me to bake a last-minute cake for his wife's 80th birthday. He'd completely forgotten. I worked all night, pouring my heart into it. I had no idea that his granddaughter was the city's most feared food critic, and that my small act of kindness was about to become the most important review of my entire career. This is a story about a cake that saved a dream. Before we fire up the ovens, I'd love to know what city are you watching from today, and be sure to subscribe for our daily stories. Okay. Let's head to that bakery. There is a particular kind of heartbreak that comes from watching your own dream die a slow and very quiet death. For the last 2 years, my bakery, the sweetest thing, had been my entire world. I had poured my life savings, and a loan from a bank that I was now hopelessly behind on, into this place. It was a beautiful little shop. A jewel box of a bakery filled with the warm, comforting scent of my own grandmother's recipes, for cinnamon and butter, and slowly caramelizing sugar. It was in every way the bakery of my dreams, and it was a complete and total failure. It was 9:00 p.m., on a Friday night. I was alone, as I always was at closing time. I stood behind the long, beautiful, and completely empty glass display case, and I looked at the numbers on my tablet. The numbers did not lie. They were a cold, hard, and deeply unforgiving testament to my own failure. I was 2 months behind on rent. The final notice from the bank was sitting on my small, cluttered desk in the back. The dream was over. I knew with a certainty that was a cold, hard stone in the pit of my stomach that I had won. Maybe 2 weeks left, before I would have to lock this door for the very last time. I was in the middle of wiping down the counters, a familiar, and deeply depressing end-of-day ritual, when the small, cheerful bell above the front door chimed. I looked up, a flicker of a long-since dashed hope in my own heart. But it was not a customer, not a real one. It was an old man, and he was not here to buy a croissant. He was here in a state of pure, unadulterated, and deeply, deeply desperate panic. He was in his late 70s, impeccably dressed in an old, but very fine tweed coat, and his face was a mask of pure white and soul-shattering terror. He looked at the empty display cases, and then at me, his eyes, a kind and very gentle shade of blue, wide with a frantic, pleading energy. "Please," he said, his voice a ragged, breathless whisper as he rushed to the counter. "Please, young lady, tell me you are not closed. I have made a terrible, a catastrophic, a life-ruiningly terrible mistake. And you," he said, his gaze landing on me, as if I were the last single solitary hope in his entire crumbling world. "You are my last and my only hope." I looked at the old man who had just burst through my door. His panic was a palpable thing, a frantic, chaotic energy that was at odds with the quiet, resigned despair of my own heart. Whoa, slow down, sir," I said, my voice a calm, gentle thing I did not feel. "Tell me what's wrong." And the story tumbled out of him, a jumbled, desperate, and deeply, deeply endearing confession. His name was Calvin, and tomorrow, he explained, his voice a ragged, breathless whisper, was his wife Eleanor's 80th birthday, and he, her husband of 55 years, had, in a moment of what he could only describe as a complete and total catastrophic failure of his own mind, completely and totally forgotten about it. He had been so consumed with her recent health scare, a long and worrying bout of pneumonia, that the date had simply vanished from his mind. He had woken up this morning, realized his terrible, unforgivable mistake, and had spent the entire day in a frantic and completely fruitless search for a proper cake. But every bakery in town was either closed or completely booked. "She deserves a parade, young lady," he said, his own kind, blue eyes now shining with a film of unshed, desperate tears. "A damn parade, and I don't even have a cupcake to give her. She will wake up tomorrow morning on her 80th birthday. And she will think that I have forgotten her, and I do not think," he said, his voice now breaking, "that my own heart could possibly bear it." I looked at him, at this kind and loving, and deeply, deeply devoted old man, who was so clearly and so completely in love with his wife. And I thought of my own dream for this bakery. I had started it not to get rich, but to create things that made people happy. To be a part of their small and beautiful, and important celebrations, and I had failed. The practical and deeply exhausted part of my brain was screaming at me to say no. I was tired, I was broke. I was out of ingredients, I was on the verge of losing the very shop he was standing in. This was not my problem. But then he looked at me, and his gaze was full of a pure and simple, and deeply human plea, and the baker in me, the girl who had learned her craft at her own grandmother's knee, the girl who believed in the simple magical power of a birthday cake. She refused to let the tired and cynical businesswoman win. "What kind of cake?" I asked, my voice a quiet and deeply resigned sigh. "Is her favorite?" His entire face lit up with a brilliant and beautiful and life-affirming hope. "Oh," he said, his voice now a happy, excited thing. "She loves the classics, a 3-layer red velvet cake with a real old-fashioned cream cheese frosting." And he added, his eyes twinkling, "If it is not too much trouble, she is very, very particular about a single perfect sugar-spun rose on the top." I almost laughed. A 3-layer red velvet with a cream cheese frosting and a hand-spun sugar rose. It was not a simple cake. It was an eighth hour, deeply technical and very expensive work of art. I just nodded. Okay, Calvin, I said, my own voice a quiet and deeply, deeply foolish sound. I can do that. He was so grateful he was practically vibrating. He tried to pay me, pulling a thick wad of cash from his wallet, but I just held up a hand. You can pay me in the morning, I said, when you pick it up, 10:00 a.m., it will be ready. I watched as he walked out of my shop, a new and happy and deeply hopeful spring in his step, and then I was alone again in the quiet, dark, and now very, very late bakery. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 9:30 p.m. I was facing an all-night, and completely and totally unprofitable task for a single, solitary cake for a complete and total stranger.